Abigail White was a true internet star with an army of devoted fans. For several years, the girl had been successfully earning money on a popular site by sharing her revealing photos. Despite Abby openly talking about her happy relationship with her boyfriend, a horrifying reality was hiding behind the perfect image, which eventually came to the surface. As an experienced detective, I've repeatedly seen that social media often creates a deceptive illusion of a perfect life, masking real problems and hidden dramas. This stunning story took place in 2022 in the city of Bristol in the southwest of Great Britain. Bristol is a large port city with a population of over 400,000. Interestingly, it's the only city in the country where the well-being of residents is on average higher than in all of Britain. It would seem to be an ideal place for a carefree and happy life. But even in such prosperous regions, horrible events sometimes occur that shock the entire community. It was here in Bristol that Bradley Lewis was born in March 2000. The boy grew up in a friendly and loving family. His parents, Steve and Rachel Lewis, were wonderful people for whom family always came first. Bradley had been a good-natured and cheerful boy since childhood. Like many of his peers in England, he was passionate about soccer from a young age and dreamed of becoming a professional player. While studying at St. Stephen's School, Bradley actively played for the local soccer team. He had many friends and buddies. As a teenager, he started going to parties, where at the age of 14 he met 15-year-old Abigail White. At the time, it seemed like a typical teenage infatuation that would pass with time, as with most peers. But who could have imagined what tragedy these seemingly innocent relationships would lead to? Bradley and Abby seemed like the perfect couple, young, beautiful, in love. But despite the outward idol, their personalities and life experiences were strikingly different. While Bradley grew up in a loving family and was surrounded by care and understanding from childhood, Abby had been through real hell and carried the burden of psychological trauma. The girl's family life began to fall apart when she was only 2 years old. Her parents constantly quarreled and even got into fights in front of their little daughter. When Abby turned 4, they finally divorced, and her mother took the girl to live with her. But not for long, soon a stepfather appeared in their life who turned out to be a real domestic tyrant. The mother's new husband not only abused his wife, but also raised his hand against little Abby. To somehow protect her daughter from this nightmare, the woman made the difficult decision to send her to live with her grandparents. So at the age of 4, the girl lost not only her father, but also her mother, finding herself being raised by elderly relatives. Of course, such traumas could not but affect Abby's behavior. At school, she constantly got into trouble, quarreled with teachers and classmates. Studying was difficult for her, her grades were low, and the threat of expulsion was very real. When the girl turned 13, at the insistence of the school administration, she was sent for a consultation with a psychiatrist. The specialist found a whole complex of psycho-emotional disorders in the young patient that required serious correction. As a detective with experience, I have often encountered similar cases. Unfortunately, children who have experienced domestic violence or separation from their parents often grow up troubled and unstable. They need a special approach, understanding and patience from adults. But unfortunately, not everyone receives proper help and support in such a situation. Apparently, Abby also did not have enough resources to cope with her demons. Despite all the difficulties, she tried to stay afloat and not give up. Perhaps that is why she so desperately clung to Bradley, a guy who promised her love, care and security. But will this young couple in love be able to build a strong relationship despite all the trials of fate? You will find out the answers very soon, but I really want it to be those of you who right now subscribe to the channel, like this video and write any comment to it so that this material can be seen by as many people as possible. This is very important for the social consciousness of society. Despite all the efforts of doctors and the prescription of antidepressants, Abby's life did not undergo cardinal changes. But at the age of 15, she met Bradley Lewis, and it seemed that a ray of light had finally appeared in her fate. The young man graduated from school, obtained a flooring specialist qualification, and started working, building his own future. Abby, on the other hand, chose a different path. Instead of looking for a permanent job or getting an education, she discovered the OnlyFans site for herself, a platform where authors can share content with their subscribers for a separate fee. And although this service can be used for various purposes, it is most famous thanks to models who attract fans with revealing photos. It was this kind of content that Abby began to create. Under the pseudonym Mitzi Lewis, the girl actively published her spicy photos, calling herself a fake Barbie. Her popularity grew rapidly, and with it, her income. In just 1 year, Abby managed to earn an impressive £50,000 sterling, over $60,000. It seemed she had finally found her niche and could count on a cloudless future. But was this success real? Could a girl who had suffered from psychological trauma and lack of love all her life find happiness in this way? And how did Bradley, who was used to completely different values, react to her choice? All these questions haunted those who knew Abby and her story. As a person who has repeatedly faced similar situations, I can say that quick money rarely brings true satisfaction, especially if it is obtained at the cost of one's own dignity and self-respect. Very often, behind outward success lies an inner emptiness and pain that cannot be filled with likes and subscriptions. Perhaps this is what Abby felt, despite her popularity on OnlyFans. Maybe deep down she understood that she had chosen the wrong path, but did not have the strength and courage to get off it. Or maybe she just didn't see any other way out, because she was used to the fact that life is a continuous struggle for survival. Be that as it may, the story of Abby and Bradley is still far from over. Whatever happens next, one thing can be said for sure. The path Abby has chosen does not lead to true happiness and harmony. And only by realizing this can she change something in her life. And just in case, I don't condemn OnlyFans so that you don't think anything for yourself there. I just think that in this case, it's inappropriate, in my opinion. And what do you think about this platform? Share your thoughts in the comments. It seemed that Abby had finally found her calling and could count on a carefree future. But already at the beginning of the second year of her career on OnlyFans, the situation changed dramatically. New models who registered on the site every day provided serious competition for the fake Barbie. Abby's popularity was rapidly melting away, and with it, her income. If in the first year the girl earned an impressive £50,000, in the second year it was only £12,000. Abby found herself facing the threat of a financial crisis. Meanwhile, the girl's family life was becoming increasingly difficult. At the time of the decline in her popularity on OnlyFans, Abby and Bradley already had 4 children. Although the details about their gender and age were kept secret, it is known that Abby gave birth to 1 child from another man. The young family huddled in a small house, and Bradley had to work a lot to provide his loved ones with a decent existence. Fortunately, Bradley's parents always supported the young couple and took an active part in raising their grandchildren. This was a real joy for Abby, who often posted happy family photos on social networks. But behind these idyllic pictures hid a completely different reality full of conflicts, resentments, and misunderstandings. Abby and Bradley's relationship had never been easy or cloudless. Over time, the girl began to have problems with alcohol and drugs. She often came home in a state of heavy intoxication, which could not but affect the atmosphere in the family. Abby herself vehemently denied having a serious addiction, blaming everything on fatigue and stress. As a psychologist, I often encounter similar cases. Unfortunately, people who have experienced psychological trauma in childhood often seek solace in alcohol or drugs. It gives them the illusion of control over their own lives and helps them escape from painful memories. But in reality, such behavior only worsens the situation, destroying not only health, but also relationships with loved ones. It seems that this is exactly what happened to Abby. Instead of seeking professional help and working on herself, she chose the easiest path, self-destruction. And Bradley, who was used to traditional family values, simply did not know how to react to such behavior from his beloved. He either tried to support her or broke into shouting and accusations, which only deepened the gap between them. Gradually, their marriage turned into a battlefield, where everyone strove to prove their rightness and defeat the other. And the children suffered the most from this, growing up in an atmosphere of constant conflict and tension. And although outwardly Abby and Bradley's family looked quite prosperous, in fact it was cracking at the seams, threatening to fall to pieces at any moment. Abby masterfully played the role of the victim, complaining to everyone around her about her boyfriend Bradley. Supposedly, he was horribly controlling her, cheating left and right, and she couldn't live because of his cruelty. And although close people knew the true value of these accusations, the girl did not stop, painting herself as an unhappy martyr in the paws of a despot. But if only Abby had looked in the mirror, she would have seen there the real tormentor of this relationship. Because in reality, it was she who was having an affair on the side, not shunning any means to fulfill her whims. Moreover, she even managed to get pregnant by her lover and give birth to a child, whom she forced Bradley to recognize as his own. Lies, it seems, were as necessary for Abby as air. Meanwhile, Bradley's friends were sounding the alarm, begging him to run away from this madwoman before it was too late. "Dude, she's a complete psychopath. You're like a thing to her that she can twist however she wants," they whispered in fright. But the boy, madly in love, stubbornly refused to hear anything, hoping by the power of his love to turn Abby into an angel. But can you cure someone who has no intention of recovering? This is the question that haunted Bradley's mother, who could barely hold back her tears as she watched her son suffer. Every humiliating remark from Abby, every contemptuous look of hers struck right into the woman's heart. And somewhere deep down, she understood that this story could not end well. And she looked into the water, as they say. In the end, the quarrels and noise in the young family reached such proportions that social services had to intervene. From now on, Abby was forbidden not only to live with Bradley, but even to approach him. The boy had to pack his bags and move back in with his parents. But did this mean the end of their relationship? Or maybe just the beginning of a new act in this drama? As a seasoned detective, I have foreseen many similar stories, and I will say frankly, they rarely end with a happy ending. Such toxic bonds cling too tightly, the poison of manipulation and violence penetrates too deeply. And to break out of this vicious circle, you need extraordinary strength and determination. It would seem that the ban on seeing each other should have put an end to the toxic relationship between Abby and Bradley. But no way. The crazy girl simply could not leave the boy alone. Every day she literally terrorized him with calls, demanding that he return home for at least one night. And Bradley, as if hypnotized, time after time succumbed to these persuasions, neglecting basic safety measures. Meanwhile, Abby discovered a new way of self-affirmation for herself: social networks. With relish playing the role of a wronged single mother, she shot TikToks where she poured a ton of dirt on Bradley. And although virtual does not always correspond to reality, trusting viewers willingly swallowed this simple sentimental bait. In her tirades, Bradley turned into a real monster, soulless and a pathological liar. You can only get the truth out of him by interrogating him all night. Abby complained tearfully in one of her voice messages to a friend. And then a real bombshell. He says, "I need a psychologist. Like otherwise, one of us will definitely end up dying. And you know what? I believe I'm capable of killing, even if later I have to rot behind bars." And probably to prove the seriousness of her intentions, on March 19, 2022, Abby decided to prove it. During another furious quarrel, the girl grabbed a knife and thrust it straight into Bradley's hand with a knife. The wound turned out to be no joke. The boy had to urgently rush to the hospital in order not to bleed to death. As a detective with considerable experience, I will say frankly, they do not joke with such statements. If a person has once crossed the line and allowed themselves to resort to violence, they will do it again. The only question is when the next outburst of aggression will happen and how serious its consequences will be. Unfortunately, Bradley was in no mood for abstract reasoning. Having patched up the wound, he continued to reach out to Abby, like a moth to a flame. The boy simply could not believe that his beloved was capable of real atrocities. He forgave her all her madness time after time, hoping that a miracle would happen now and the girl would come to her senses. But the miracle did not come. Instead, the relationship between Abby and Bradley increasingly resembled a fierce game of cat and mouse. They either quarreled until they were hoarse or fell into each other's arms, as if trying to make up for lost time. And above their heads, like the sword of Damocles, hung the ominous shadow of the knife that so mercilessly plunged into Bradley's body. Bradley decided to cover for Abby when the doctor inquired about the origin of the wound on his arm. "I just bumped into something at work," the boy lied, not wanting his crazy girlfriend to get into trouble with the police. But after this incident, even he, hopelessly in love, realized it's time to run away from this madwoman, no matter what joint children they have. But no way. As if enchanted, Bradley reached out to Abby again and again, ignoring all the warnings of social services. And here, just 6 days after the knife incident, Thursday, March 25, 8 p.m., a chilling scream comes from the house where the White Lewis family lived. Abby, sobbing, begs for help, demands to urgently call an ambulance. The neighbor is the first to rush to the alarm, thinking that someone has fallen ill. But when the frightened Abby mutters something about her Bradley no longer breathing, the woman rushes to the White Lewis house to see with her own eyes what is happening there. And the picture that opens up is enough to make one faint on the spot. Everywhere you look in the corridor, in the living room, dark, ominous blood stains. But the real horror awaited in the kitchen. Right in the middle of the room on the floor, Bradley lay on his back, pale, motionless, clearly unconscious. And on the windowsill, a bloody knife stuck out carelessly, a silent witness to some terrible drama. The dumbfounded neighbor, numb with fright, dials 911 with trembling hands. A moment later, her husband bursts into the kitchen and freezes, struck by what he saw. What happened in this house? Why is Bradley lying motionless in a pool of his own blood? And most importantly, whose hands so mercilessly plunged a knife into him? All these questions swarmed in my head as the sirens of the ambulance and cops wailed. and something suggested that the answers to them would turn the life of not only the White Lewis family upside down, but also of everyone who even caught a glimpse of the abyss of their toxic relationship. Abby, trembling like an aspen leaf, was muttering something about some accident, begging me to believe that she had nothing to do with it. But how could one believe the word of a girl who was used to lying right and left? A girl who just a week ago admitted that she was capable of murder? The answer is obvious. Of course not. As an experienced detective, I know perfectly well, people with a dark past rarely change. And if they have once crossed the line of what is permitted, then they will almost certainly do it again, simply because they are used to living by the laws of the jungle, where the strongest and most brutal survives. It seems that it was this primordial thirst for blood that pushed Abby to the fatal act. Unable to withstand another quarrel or simply going crazy with jealousy, she grabbed a knife and stabbed her beloved in the back, literally and figuratively. Or maybe it was all completely different. Maybe Bradley, driven to despair by constant reproaches and humiliating treatment, dared to fight. That fateful evening, Abby once again gave free rein to her demons. At the bar, she kept knocking back shot after shot, completely losing control of herself. Drunk and furious like a witch from a fairy tale, the girl swore at the staff and visitors, not mincing words. It seemed that she had completely forgotten about decency and common sense. Meanwhile, Bradley and his friend Ryan slipped into the bathroom, where the boy, unable to restrain his emotions, burst into tears. Through sobs, he confessed that he dreamed of running away from Abby as far as he could see, but he was afraid because his psycho girlfriend had threatened to take her own life if he left her. What a trap, my friends, neither to run nor to stay. While the boys were sharing revelations in the men's room, Abby managed to get into trouble. Having been rude to one of the visitors, she earned a slap in the face and even fell to the floor. It's good that her friend picked her up and led her aside, otherwise they would have had to gather the beauty in pieces. When Bradley and Ryan returned to the table, an unpleasant surprise awaited them. Abby, without thinking twice, threw a glass of cocktail in her beloved's face and began to scream that he did not stand up for her honor. And when Ryan tried to calm his friend down, she spat right between his eyes. That's some lady, I tell you. At 7:30, the couple was already rumbling home in the car of their old friend Alfie, whom they had met at the bar. The guy said that all the way Bradley and Abby were gnawing at each other like rabid dogs, and as soon as they drove up to the house, the girl jumped out of the car and rushed inside, as if all the demons of hell were chasing her. Bradley sat with his friend for a few more minutes, as if anticipating something. As a farewell, he uttered an ominous phrase, "I will die when I return home." Alfie shuddered at these words, they sounded too creepy. Just in case, he left Bradley his number so that he could call if anything. Having said goodbye to his comrade, the guy went to meet his fate, and she was already waiting for him on the threshold, wicked as 100 devils, and with a knife in her trembling hands. During a quarrel, Abby did stick the blade into her beloved's chest, and in just 20 minutes, the neighbor was already calling 911. A finale worthy of a Shakespearean tragedy. When the detectives began to study Bradley's cell phone, an unpleasant discovery awaited them. It turns out that over the past months, Abby had been bombarding the guy with hundreds of messages with threats, and so terrible that I'd better keep silent so as not to disturb your imagination. Before the trial, Abby was examined by a whole bunch of psychologists. Their verdict was disappointing. The girl has a borderline personality disorder, because of which she is not able to control her emotions and outbursts of anger. In addition, a few days before the massacre, Abby experienced a double stress, an abortion and the news of Bradley's new passion. No wonder she lost her mind. But at the time of the commission of the crime, she was in a completely healthy state. But despite all the diagnoses, the jury was relentless. After deliberating for 12 hours, they unanimously found Abigail White guilty of premeditated murder. The sentence is life imprisonment with a right to parole in 18 years. That is, this Missy will be released no earlier than 2040, when she turns 41. What a perspective. And while the killer is in prison, Bradley's family is picking up the pieces of their lives. The father admitted that the loss of his son was the most terrible tragedy for him, and the mother still carries this pain in her heart. But at least they can count on the support of the community. Hundreds of caring people came to Bradley's funeral. The soccer club where the boy kicked the ball even held a charity match and transferred part of the proceeds to the Lewis family. And the former coach, with tears in his eyes, recalled Bradley as a bright and sincere child, the true pride of his parents. As for Abby, she lost everything: her beloved, children, freedom, future. And this is probably the most terrible punishment for a woman who with her own hands destroyed what others would give their lives for. But will she understand her guilt? Will she atone for her sins? Who knows? One thing is certain, this bloody story will still fester hearts for a long time, reminding us of the price of jealousy and unrestrained passions. So be careful, my friends. Take care of yourself and your loved ones, and may you never have to find yourself on the other side of the protective glass, either in the courtroom or in a prison cell. Because life is the most precious gift, and to exchange it for some emotions or grudges is a crime that has no justification. With this, our eerie tale comes to an end. Thank you for being with me all this time and living every moment of this drama. I hope it made you think and maybe take a fresh look at some things. Rate this video if you don't mind, and share your impressions in the comments. Your opinion, as always, is very important to me. And I say goodbye to you until the next exciting story. Hold on, love life, and be attentive to those around you. Because sometimes even the most innocent flirtation can turn into a real tragedy.